Welcome to the SRP 3.0 tutorial series. In this series of short videos, we'll explore different features of SRP 3.0. In this particular video, we'll look at the 4 different list types in SRP 3.0 and some basic list navigation. So let's take a look at the types first. The 4 different list types in SRP 3.0 are locations, individuals, activities, and cycles. They're on the main menu right after the Home tab. If we look at the locations, we'll see that there are some navigational features we should come accustomed to. Across the top, we have a Create button, Batch Update button, and an Export Data button. We'll start with the Export Data. If you select Export Data, you will get an option to export to Excel, which will take the list that is currently displayed and export it to Excel. If you do this, you'll be prompted to give a name to the list you're exporting and select the location. And once the export file is created, you'll be prompted to open up the export file if you like. If we open it up, we'll see that not only did it export the columns that were being displayed, but it exported the rest of the information at that record level. That's important to note because if you need to export the information or share information with another agency, this is an easy way to export or extract information from SRP 3.0. So going back to the list view, you'll see that as I hover over a record, the blue highlight bar will move up and down. And as I scroll over the values, you'll see a highlighted or underlined blue line that would indicate this is a link also appear. It's important to note what you are actually clicking on. Although we're looking at a list of localities, if I hover over the region column, that region name becomes highlighted. So if I click on that, I'll actually be taken to the region record, not the location record. Similarly to the cluster, if I click on the cluster name, I'll be taken to the cluster record. This becomes important when you are modifying data or perhaps even removing or deleting data. And you need to make sure that you click on the right item in order to have the right record brought up. So let's look at the menu title or the list title as well. On here, we clicked on locations in the main menu, and this particular list of localities came up. Localities are nothing more than cities or Baha'i communities. So that's a new terminology that you may not be accustomed to. But within the localities, if I click on the localities label, you'll see that there are other types of lists that we can select. I can select the national community, which will only have one record in most of our databases. Or I can select regions, which again will only have one record. Or select clusters. Once again, most of our databases will have just a single cluster in them. Going down to localities or communities, these are all the communities within that cluster. And we have one more level we can go down, and that is the focus neighborhoods. And if focus neighborhoods for a particular locality has been created, then they will be shown in this list. On this list menu, we have a couple of other options as well. We have some options under cluster options, and these show your locality type mismatch and locality last verified. We would like to have the localities verified at least once every 6 months. So what does that mean? Let's open up one of these locations. So in a locality record, we have the name and the cluster that that location is in, but we also have some information about the level of community building activity that is going on within that location. So these are whether the location or locality has a local spiritual assembly? And if so, or if not, is a local Baha'i fund established? If the location is observing the 19-day feast, and if so, how many believers on average attend the 19-day feast? If the location is holding holy days, and if so, how many individuals attend the holy day observances, and so on. So this information doesn't change that often, but you should keep in mind to come in and look at the locality information at least once every 6 months to make sure that nothing has really changed. And that's what these two items allow us to do. One is the localities last verified. This would show a list of all the locations that haven't been verified or haven't been updated in the last 6 months. The other one is the locality type mismatch. A locality type determines whether the location has a local spiritual assembly or not. So if you have flagged the location as having a local spiritual assembly, but you only have 5 adult Baha'is listed in your membership database for that location, it'll appear on this report as a type mismatch. Perhaps there is either a mistake in flagging a local spiritual assembly exists, or some membership information needs to be updated. We look further down on this list, we have a regional option. Similarly to the locality last verified, we have the cluster last verified. And similarly, we'd like this information updated once every 6 months, or at least looked at once every 6 months. And if we look at the cluster, we'll see the types of information on here is probably not going to change that often. We have the name and the region that that cluster is in. Also, the level of program, intensive program growth, or the level of the cluster. So the options are program and growth, intensive program and growth, IPG, embracing large numbers. The geographic scope and population is probably not going to change, but your auxiliary board members periodically may change, and your coordinators that are assigned to the cluster may change. So this is the information that we would like to have verified every 6 months. And the way you would verify it is come in here, and if you need to save the record, and that would update that date. So when we come back to the cluster last verified, we see that the cluster is no longer listed. So that covers the 4 different types. Let's look at some of the other types actually before we end the video. If we look at the individuals, you'll see similarly we have a list of individuals listed. We have a drop-down menu currently showing all individuals, but if I select that drop-down menu, I have some additional filtering that I can do. I can select all the junior youth, for instance, or select all the youth, or adults, or children. And some of the data entry or verification options on the individuals tabs are duplicate entries. So I can select duplicate entries and it'll show me any record in the database that appears to be a duplicate. We have 2 Peter Pans in the database. Perhaps they're the same person. We would have to investigate which record actually is the correct record. But in case that we find, we really do have 2 Peter Pans, we can select both of these records and come up to the top and set as non-duplicate. So this will flag in our database that these 2 individuals are actually separate individuals and they are not a duplicate, and they won't show up on this list anymore. If I go ahead and set these 2 Peter Pans as non-duplicates, then we'll see that the next item in the cluster options is the non-duplicate entries. So if I select that, it will show me all the records that I had previously selected or set to be non-duplicate. And this time around, I can come in here and set them as a duplicate. So it takes that non-duplicate flag off. So let's take a look at the activities. SRP 3.0 tracks 3 types of activities: children's classes, junior youth groups, and study circles. For children's classes and junior youth groups, when you go into a children's class or you start a children's class or a junior youth group, what you'll be able to do is, first of all, identify the locality and the focus neighborhood, if this activity is actually happening within a focus neighborhood, and the start date. If you know the exact date, that's preferred, but month and year is preferred or optional. So when you first start an activity, you're going to have a teacher. In this case, it's a children's class, so we'll have teachers assigned. And you'll see that we have a current flag. So if a teacher is no longer actively teaching at this study circle, at this children's class, all you have to do is check that current flag off, and you can add the new teacher. So you don't need to delete the record entirely. All you have to do is flag it, whether it's current or not. If someone's not really a full-fledged teacher but is co-teaching or shadowing somebody else, you can flag them as a co-teacher. So these children's classes and junior youth groups will have a animator or a teacher. They'll also have participants. If we look at the participants, you'll see that there are some participants entered into this children's class, and we have a flag whether they are a registered Baha'i or not. So that allows us to identify anyone that is not a Baha'i but is attending a activity. And there is, again, a current flag. So if someone stops coming to a children's class, instead of deleting their name and losing all track of that activity, you can flag them as no longer current. So when this particular book of this children's class is completed, they will not be flagged as having completed that book. And that brings us to the third tab, the study history. So a children's class, once formed, generally will start with a particular book. In this case, we have grade 1 selected. And we know that the grade started on January 2016. Let's assume this children's class completed this grade. So if we mark this grade as completed, it will ask us, when did they complete this grade? For lack of a better term, let's say they completed this grade in June of 2016. And it will give us the opportunity to say which of the students actually completed the book. So you'll notice that the first couple of individuals that I had taken the current flag off are not listed in this list. But let's assume Raven also didn't complete the book. We can uncheck that at this point. And when we click OK, we see that this study circle has completed grade 1, and it started at this date, ended at this date, and these were the participants that finished that grade. Now we can start the next grade with the same group of individuals, the same teachers, the same participants, and say in July of 2016, we started grade 2. So let's save this record. It's okay, so we're still okay here. These individuals have completed grade 1. Let's save that record. It appeared that only the save and close button was actually working. I'll have to check into that. But similar to the children's classes, junior youth groups work the same way. When we go into a junior youth group, we'll have an animator, we'll have participants, and we'll have study history. So this is the book that this junior youth group is currently studying. Once this book is completed, we can flag which book they have moved on to and keep a history of all the books that this same junior youth group completes. If you notice that in this list of activities, we have the name that is clickable, we have the cluster and the location and the facilitator name that are clickable. So each of these will take us to a different record. If I click on the facilitator name, it'll take me to that individual's record. If I click on the locality name, it'll take me to the location or the community's record. If I click on the cluster, similarly, it'll take me to the cluster. So it's very important to know what you need to click on. And for the most part, you're going to be clicking in the name column when you want to go to a particular record. So lastly, on the activities, we have study circles. So look at a study circle. The study circle has the basic information tab and the participation tab. It doesn't have that history tab that we saw in the children's class and junior youth group, because unlike the children's class and junior youth group, the study circles are generally starting and stopping and studying a particular book. So once that book finishes, that study circle completes, and then if you need to and that group moves on to a different book, you would start a brand new study circle. So here we have the individual, the basic tab information. Study circle is located in this city, perhaps located in a focused neighborhood. The book that is being studied, the date it started, if we flag it as complete, the date it completed would be entered here. The tutors, again, we have the ability of flagging someone as a co-tutor, or you can flag both individuals as tutors if they're both tutoring. And we have the participation as well. So we have participants in here and whether they are registered Baha'is or not. And when you complete a book, so if I come in here and I say this book actually completed in October of 2016, I could come in here into the participations and say, you know what, Fred actually missed the latter half of the book, so he didn't complete this book. So I can close that, and that will mark that book as having been completed. So again, most of these tabs, the locations, the individuals, and the activities behave similarly. They all display a list. They all allow you to go into a detailed record for that type of list and allow you to update information. We didn't look at the individuals, but let's look at the individuals here and open up an actual record. So when you go into an individual's record, you'll have the name, their first name and family name, the sex designator, and the age category is automatically calculated based on the age. And if you know the date of birth of the individual, so for most children and junior youth, you'd want to get the date of birth because that is important when they go from one age category to the next. So you would enter the date of birth. If you don't know the date of birth and the individual's an adult and it really doesn't matter anymore because we're not hit by an age category that we're trying to track, you can simply estimate the age. And you can click on the edit button next to the age estimate and enter an estimate, and you will not be required to enter a date of birth. So going further down, you have the location. Which locality is this individual residing in? If they reside in a focused neighborhood, you can designate a focused neighborhood. And then the address for their home, telephone number, and email address. And you can add additional telephone numbers if you need to. You see that individuals have 3 tabs. So we have on the first tab the basic information. The activity history will show all the activities this individual is either a participant of or a tutor of. So if they are teaching a children's class, animating a junior youth group, or tutoring a study circle, that would be listed here, as well as their role within that activity. We also have a third tab, which is all books and courses that have been completed. So this is a tab that is beneficial to bring your data up to date. So if you have an individual that has previously completed some Ruhi courses, but you don't have those listed in your database, you can simply come in here and flag any additional book that this individual has completed, or flag any books that this individual may have actually facilitated. So let's assume they have completed book 7 and have actually facilitated books 1 and 2. You could flag those in here as well. These become important because you can get some reports and extracts of individuals that have facilitation experience or have completed certain books but haven't completed other books. So the more accurate you make this information, the better it is later on when you're trying to analyze your data. The only other list that we haven't looked at is the cycles. And like I mentioned earlier, the cycles are records that comprise a 3-month cycle of activity within a cluster. And a cycle record will have a start and stop date. The date is actually what you want to click on to go into the cycle record. If you click on the cluster name or the region name, you'll be taken to those records instead. So if we click on the cycle record date, you'll see that the first tab, the basic information, has the cluster that this cycle is attached to, as well as the start and stop date. On this tab, we also have the estimated number of participants in the expansion phase. It's because of this field that I generally recommend starting your cycle record about 2 or 3 weeks into one of your 3-month cycles of activities. After you've completed your expansion phase, you can comfortably come in, create a new cycle record, and put in the expansion phase participation figure. When you first create your cycle record, what it will do is it'll actually go into your database for your locations, individuals, and activities and bring that information forward for you. What does that mean? Well, let's look at the locality data. If we look at the locality data, there's some information in here about whether devotional gatherings are being held, the number of devotional meetings, the average number of attendees, and the number of friends of the faith. Similarly to the 19-day feast, holy days, home visits. These were some of the tabs that we were entering or could enter on the locations or the locality record. So that information gets brought forward for you. But within this cycle record, you can actually update this information. So if you know that additional devotional gatherings started or the devotional gathering counts have changed, you could update this information and it will back post it into your locality data. Similarly, the next tab for cycle data allows you to review some of the other information about your cluster. So the first one is the completed courses. This comes either from the activities that you've created and completed, or in that list of previous books that we looked at on an individual's record. So table 1 is the courses that have been completed. Table 2 is the current core activities, and that's going to come from any activity records that you have open. If you are just starting with SRP and entering your cycles within SRP, but you don't have a lot of the backdated activities yet, what you can do is whatever information gets calculated, you can click on the edit button, and that will allow you to override the previously calculated information. If you click reset, it will take it back to the system calculated numbers again. Looking further down, we have the expansion during the cycle. So if any expansion activity, any registrations occurred or enrollments occurred during your expansion phase, those numbers would be entered in this block. And lastly, community development, home visits, and estimated number of believers attending your 19-day feast. That information would be entered here, or you could override what is pre-calculated. But as you start using the system and you start getting your location information, individuals, and activities up to date, most of this information, when you create a cycle record, will be brought forward for you, and you'll have very little that you have to manually enter. So that completes our look at the 4 different types of lists within SRP 3.0, as well as some details on each of the individual lists and some navigational features within SRP 3.0. Thank you for watching this video. Look forward for more videos in this series in our YouTube channel.